Hey, everybody, welcome to another spoiler review episode here on the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey! We gotta figure out Emma's part of it. Emma, you get to do the A.
For those of you who are looked at the thumbnail, looked at the title, we are going to be doing a spoiler review here of episodes 1 and 2 of WandaVision. Finally dropped on there on Disney Plus from Marvel, and it's going to be so much fun to dive into all of this. I am one of your hosts, the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always by my brother over there in the corner right now instead of in the middle.
That would be me. I am Michael Vogel, writer, producer of animated TV shows and movies. And hey, I guess somebody does put Michael in a corner, and it's the Outlaw.
That's right. And there in the bottom corner to my left, Shannon McClung. How are you, Shannon?
I'm good. This is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor, where you may have seen me on Silicon Valley, Modern Family, and Teen Wolf. And this is the first time I get to look up and see John.
No, that's right.
Brady Bunch
wait, Shannon, let's be honest. You've been looking up at us for a long time.
I'm not I need to find the angle to. I'm doing it the wrong way.
And we are so blessed and thankful and looking forward to having our fourth host on this show. She is the host of The Download on VN TV. All of you know her from so many other things like the Schmodown and her own channel. And of course, she is a Twitch goddess. The awesome, talented, incredibly knowledgeable Emma Fyffe. How are you?
I'm just great. Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the Brady Bunch box setup is very apropos for this particular television series, which we're going to be discussing.
Totally fitting.
Yeah,
1,000% agree. Well, let's get into it here. And just one more warning: this is spoiler review, so we'll be going in depth into the stuff that we saw here in the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. First time in 15 months that we've gotten some original live action Marvel content, and this comes to us. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. And this comes to us from creator Jac Schaeffer and, of course, director Matt Shakman there on these first 2 episodes of WandaVision. So let's go around the horn first before we get into the episodes and get our overall thoughts of these first 2 episodes. Let's start with our guest, Emma Fyffe. Please, Emma, what's your feeling walking away after you've seen both of these episodes of WandaVision?
Oh, man, I could not have been more excited for this show. I mean, it's interesting because I wouldn't say that I was necessarily chomping at the bit when I was first introduced to the idea that there was going to be a series about Wanda and Vision until I heard the sort of log line for what the show was, that it was very much this sort of love letter to the American sitcom with an underlying story about like a woman who's going through some sort of mental collapse, perhaps, if you will. It's a little unclear at this point, but I am so unbelievably on board. The thing that really strikes me about this show is it's not a parody at all. It is not a parody of the sort of classic sitcom. It is truly an homage to it. And then they're introducing these sort of outside elements that lend to, okay, what's the mystery of this thing? But I'm having so much fun living in the moment. It's not because sometimes I feel that with shows that are hinging on a mystery, there's too much what's going on and it's not interesting. It's just like, I feel lost. Right. And in this show, I do maybe feel a little lost because like last we saw Wanda, she was, the contemporary woman with long hair and a cool coat. And now she's like a 60s sitcom housewife. So obviously something crazy is going on, but I'm on board with it. I love it.
I think you make excellent points, Emma, and we'll go to you next, Vogel, in just a second. But yeah, you make excellent points here about the fact that, look, this is not a parody. This is an homage, and this is very much about navigating the trauma of loss and whatever's happening here with Wanda Maximoff. Mike, what's your feelings as you watch these 2 episodes unfold? You're a showrunner. You're a writer. You've been a producer on these TV shows, yes, animated and otherwise. But like, what was your feeling watching the construction of these 2 very unusual episodes on Disney Plus?
I was so thrilled. Much like Emma, like I grew up as a TBS kid. Growing like TBS when I was growing up in the 80s was the channel that had all the old stuff. I Love Lucy, Three Stooges, Dick Van Dyke, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie. So the second that the first episode started, I had a big grin on my face. And much like Emma, I have a lot of questions. Obviously, we're geeks, so we have a ton of theories that are maybe right and maybe wrong to those questions. But more so than the bigger mystery, I was so enjoying just living in this sitcom universe because they really did nail it. Yeah. And the other thing that surprised me about watching these was the underlying tragedy that I felt. When you're watching this adorable Dick Van Dyke sort of I Love Lucy in episode 1, I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched kind of thing in episode 2. And it's cute and it's funny, and Vision and Wanda are adorable. Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany are just knocking the comedy out of the park. And in the back of your head, as a Marvel nerd, you're like, they just went through like the images of Thanos ripping out the Mind Stone from Vision, the images of Elizabeth Olsen just so sad, kicking the shit out of Thanos because he took everything from her, and that sort of juxtaposed with this black and white idyllic romance. It's like the show, to answer your question on the showrunner level, what I really respected about it is they are working on multiple levels, and every level is kicking. Like, we'll get into details as we go through the episodes, but half the lines work as it's a cute sitcom, but there's an underlying meaning. A certain word is chosen that actually means something that ties back to something else. And so they're creating this mystery for us while at the same time giving us this love letter. And both pieces are given equal weight, which I think was kind of surprising to me. And kind of that was part of the real treat of watching these episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Shannon, we're in a new world now where there is more and more conversations about PTSD and mental health and struggles with loss and the things that people navigate and go through. There's way more psychotherapy. There's way more books available to navigate all this stuff for people. But remember, Wanda Maximoff was like a sheltered person. Her and her brother, sheltered person. So in my mind, this is her navigating this trauma through probably the only television she was allowed to watch in whatever complex she was held in. So what's your feeling as you watch her kind of do her interpretation of these shows throughout these first 2 episodes?
Well, I thought that's the really interesting thing is, we've seen the trailers, we've seen these glimpses of TV sets from different eras and how it's going to tie into what is currently going on. I was really curious, like, is there going to be any sort of setup? Like, are they going to show her in an old abandoned house? And they don't. They go right into the opening of a sitcom from the 1950s. And to echo what Mike said, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen are having a blast. Yeah. Because, I mean, like, I also have seen sitcoms from the 50s and 60s, and it's like, this is what those shows were. I mean, I read one of the reviews, because I'm sure we all read the reviews early, and overwhelmingly positive. One or two that was kind of like, I don't know who it was, but the guy or the gal, I can't remember, was just saying like, oh, they needed punchier scripts because X, Y, and Z. They're trying to shove in all this stuff. And I'm like, this person has not seen a sitcom from the 1950s, because the jokes were very clever for that time. And it's really, really interesting to see how Wanda, you see the things, they're jokes, but they're laced with tragedy.
That's actually something I've seen come up a few times, and it's not so much a criticism of the show as I've seen people expressing concern on Twitter or wherever about like people who are younger than, say, I am. I was a kid in the 90s. I grew up watching all of those sitcoms on Nick at Night because I had a TV in my room and sometimes I couldn't sleep and I'd put Nick at Night on, and I used to watch Bewitched, Dick Van Dyke Show, I Dream of Jeannie, Brady Bunch, all of them. They were all on there. But there is a generation after me, I think, that hasn't necessarily seen the shows that this show is very, very directly and brilliantly referencing. So I do wonder if there are younger people maybe who are a little like, huh? Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And also you have to look at this. This is her interpretation of the show. She is our unreliable narrator in this situation. So you're not going to get, hey, the punchiest scripts and the funniest jokes and let's hit the beats. This is very much her navigating her trauma through her own technique of putting this relationship in this world. So she's not 100% going to get it right. Like all of us retelling a joke or retelling a story, we don't always get it right from a sitcom we watch. We miss some beats or whatever. That's how it is. So that's the license you have to give this show a little bit and stop being like, well, this isn't the most well-written. Or no, this is
ridiculous.
You know?
I also, before we dive in, if I could, Johnny, I just wanted to also, off of what Emma said, because I've talked to some people too, and I think that I've talked to some friends of ours that work at some other studios, and there's sort of this, either people are super on board with what the show is and they're loving it, but there's also this sort of like, well, younger kids don't get these references. Was this the smartest way to do? Are they going to lose an audience because they're confused? There's a lot of that, and I just want to give Marvel some straight up props off the bat. We are always asking, whenever we see these things, like, oh, I wish they would have taken a risk. I wish they would have tried something different. I wish they would have really zigged when we thought they were going to zag. And this is such a departure for Marvel. And to go back to these old sitcoms, to go back to black and white, I think that's the reason that they premiered the first 2 episodes together, because by the second episode, we start to get some of the weirder bits and literally move to color. But I do think that like they just deserve a ton of props for taking 2 of their characters. And I know that Winter Soldier and Falcon was supposed to be the first thing out of the gate. I kind of love that WandaVision ended up being the first thing, because for Marvel's first TV show to be such an homage to TV is great. But just like props to them for being risky. I think they nailed it. I'm super excited to get into the details.
And it makes sense that this was not the initial introduction of Phase 4, that they were going to go with Black Widow, something that is very Marvel. They were going to go with Falcon and Winter Soldier, something that is very Marvel. But these are the cards they've been dealt. And ultimately, this was a swing that they had to take, and it looks like it's paying off.
And there'll be some Russian references in this show, just like there would be in Black Widow. So, all right, let's move on to episode 1 here. Let's get through it. Basically, the premise centers on a confusion about a scheduled dinner with Vision's boss. The Hearts coming over to the house, but we get it just right off the bat. We get like the song that gives us the exposition, which is very reminiscent of the Donna Reed show. Even The Nanny, for those of you who are a little younger, did this kind of thing as well, as an homage to the old school sitcoms. Watch that. Hear that opening intro song explaining her situation, the girl from Flushing, Queens. So there's references here that you can make that are still modern and not necessarily all the way back to the 50s, but it's a great intro to get you into the mood of it. Then we open up with them in the kitchen, and everything is very 50s. Like even the special effects is very 50s. Like Mike, going into this opening here, what was your feeling as you were walking into all of this world that they were creating here and the way they approached it?
Well, first of all, opening song, Bobby Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez, who gave us "Let It Go" and all the Frozen songs. So off the bat, great song. I was watching it with my little brother, and I think to get my reaction on what I thought going in, he said maybe a minute and a half into the show, he looked at me. I had the biggest smile on my face. He was like, "You're already in love with this." I was like, "I'm already in love with this." The opening scene, I knew right off the bat. I loved the 1950s style magic, like that they just went for like the cheesy sort of weird cuts and everything else. But off the bat, you sort of get, as soon as Wanda said, "Oh, there's my husband with his indestructible head," and we all know that head's not indestructible. That's how he died. And so right off the bat, you started to get these references about there's layers to what they're saying. This works as just the typical, this is my robot husband and I'm his witch wife, but they're gonna sort of talk around the things that we know are really going on, which is what someone kind of dealing with this level of trauma would potentially do. And then on top of that, just the 2 of them, we've seen Wanda and Vision go through stuff. They didn't have a ton of time together in Age of Ultron. They had some very cute scenes together in Civil War. And by the time we get to Endgame, they're already in love and we're deep in the action. This was one of the first times that we just got to see these 2 be freaking adorable with each other. And they were so sweet. And I think that's the thing that's really going to make this show. We're talking about the references to the old TV shows. We're talking about ties back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're going to talk about Easter eggs. None of that would matter if we weren't rooting for them as a couple. And this first scene just solidifies that you want these 2 to work out.
Yeah, Emma, the chemistry here is really great between these 2. And then, of course, you get a little bit of the old cliche tropes of, the wife having to whip up a great breakfast on the fly. All of that kind of weaved into this, as well as revealing I don't know, what do you call it? Like the confusion or the mistake that's going to be rectified a little bit later on the episode, but they don't know what the heart means on the 23rd.
I believe we call that shenanigans.
Yeah, shenanigans, sure.
No, yeah, the heart on the calendar thing and the two different interpretations of it is such a classic sitcom storyline. And, you know, the fact that one of my favorite parts of the whole episode is when they have the conversation on the phone, when he calls her from the office to tell her, hey, I now know what the thing is. And she says, oh, well, don't worry. I've got the whole thing under control, because she's already met up with the neighbor and decided it's their anniversary and is planning this romantic evening for them at home. Which then, of course, adds to that really great layer of he comes home with the boss and his wife, and then she's there in her robe, like ready to have a romantic evening. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Shannon, you look. It's August 23rd. You were texting us yesterday saying I've explored every nook and cranny. Did you explore a nook and cranny of what August 23rd might mean?
Well, because they don't know. They were like, what does that mean? Well, August 23rd is 8/23, but because Wanda is European, it would be day month. So 23/8. Avengers 238 deals with Vision being reactivated after he's done an adventure where he was deactivated. In Avengers 238, he is reactivated.
Right.
Also,
and Monica Rambeau is in that issue as well. Sorry, Mike, go ahead. Yeah.
23 Marvel movies.
Yeah. Good point. 23 Marvel movies, that's for sure. Yeah, and Monica Rambeau is in this thing, and of course, Vision was injured in Avengers number 233. Annihilus is the person that deactivates Vision here, created a null field, a sort of force field intended to destroy Earth by creating a reaction that will merge Earth with the negative zone. Vision literally attempts to break through an energy field created by a magical character that threatens Earth's existence, which is seemingly exactly what Sword is trying to do in WandaVision as well, break through this force field. So there's even just a little subtle nerdy reference for those of us who are readers of the comics. Let's get into Agnes. Shannon, I'll start with you here. Kathryn Hahn, who has been killing it for years, doing comedy in numerous places, seeing her step in as Agnes, which some people are already saying is a shortened version of Agatha Harkness. Agnes, what's your thoughts on her approach and her energy to the show?
Well, when they first announced that Kathryn Hahn was going to be playing the nosy neighbor, it's like, oh, well, that's perfect casting. Yeah. And then you see how she just fits seamlessly into this type of role, and seeing how she's going forward. And again, watching the trailers, there's clearly more going on here with Agnes that is being revealed in the first episode. But thus far, Kathryn Hahn, absolutely awesome. And the fact that she was sort of the spoiler for the end of the episode. Again, perfect classic 1950s sitcom trope. Oh, you weren't answering your back door, so I'm knocking on your front door. Kathryn Hahn, you're doing great.
The pun of good. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
No, I think it's really interesting. A lot, like you said, a lot of discussion about who is she? Is she Agatha Harkness? Is Agatha Harkness helping Wanda? Is she harming Wanda? She's done both in her history in the comic books. And I think it's like of note, at least in these first two episodes, that within the world of the sitcom, in both episode 1 and episode 2, Agnes as a character is helping Wanda achieve whatever her goal is of that week. Yeah. You need to get a dinner done to help out your husband. I happen to have a 4-course dinner. Hey, in episode 2, let me give you the ropes. Like, here's what you need to do to deal with Dottie. So I think the fact that Agnes is within the sitcom world being very helpful might be a hint of where we're going to see Agatha Harkness go, but remains to be seen.
Yeah, Emma, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, for me, like, one of the things that I really enjoyed, because I think it's something that we are honestly, with the exception of maybe Captain Marvel's the only one that's immediately coming to mind for me. But one of the things that I feel we don't get a lot of within sort of the Marvel cinematic universe is female friendships. Yes. Like, obviously you have that big scene in the end of Endgame where all of the women characters come together. But for the most part, many of those women had never interacted with one another before in their entire existence, as far as we know. So the fact that so much of this show thus far is framed with this friendship that's developing between Wanda and Agnes, it's just really, as a viewer, very compelling for me. And
it's an interesting course they're taking with her, because, like, Agatha Harkness in the comics trains Wanda, but she seems here a little bit of a guide and less of a trainer in this situation, the way they're approaching it. Also, for those who are keen-eyed, she's wearing a brooch, and she constantly wears a brooch in both episodes. Agatha Harkness wears a brooch in the comics, so there's a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be her, but certainly all signs are pointing in that direction for sure. And now let's move on to Paul Bettany, who's over at his job, computational services, whatever that means, because they apparently don't sell or make or do anything.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I love that he asked, what exactly do we do here? Because that, again, is another very, like, early sitcom-y trope of we're not entirely sure what the husband's job is. We know he goes to the office every day, but we don't really know what he does.
And this is a great example, again, of working on both levels, because you're 100% right. Everyone in these 1950s sitcom went to the office. You'd see them at the office, and you're like, what? It's like the Jetsons' Spacely Sprockets. You're like, what the fuck do you do, George Jetson? But at the same time, it's also working to illustrate the fact that this fantasy is not 100% worked out. He knows he goes to the office. He knows he's there to do stuff, but there's gaps in this world, and that's where it starts to get interesting. And again, that's what I was talking about. It's like it works on two levels, and that's what's really, really fun.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mike. This idea of he doesn't know what he's doing here. And he's not going to be the only person who asks Wanda, what am I doing here? Or asks other people, what am I doing here? They don't, because they're not sure how they've been brought into this world by Wanda. Also, this idea of using Yakety Yak, I think, is brilliant. To using that song, a nonsensical song. Essentially, this is nonsensical stuff we're watching because it's not reality. So it just makes so much sense to use that song as well.
There's another theory.
Don't talk back too.
There's another theory going around that's a little bit more demonic in why they used it. Again, we'll get into this later, and I don't know that this is why they did it, but a lot of people are trying to figure out who the potential big bad, if there is one, could be. As we talked about, Mephisto, who is a Marvel villain that is tied to Wanda and her children in the comics, who is very demonic in appearance and vibe. So there's a lot of references throughout here that kind of could be construed to kind of be hints towards a devil, including yak legs, horns, whatever. Like, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I wanted to bring it up. I am telling you, like, when you start to go through, like, what I love about this, and we talk about this on our Star Wars reviews for Mandalorian as well, is the geeks have been, it has been a dry desert for us for a long time. And the geeks have come out in force, talking. People are talking numerology. People are talking everything. So I don't know that Yakety Yak. I think it very much places it in the 1950s as well, which is nice. I don't know, but I felt that I needed to bring this up as part of the review. That there is Mephisto potential discussion buzzing around the tweets.
Mike, there is one writer who was in the WandaVision writing room who was like, also, guys, a yak, it could be like a devil's legs. There's one person that is thrilled that you just said that.
Shannon, I have been in writers' rooms with you. You would be that writer.
Well, let's move on here. We meet Mr. Hart here, who's playing. We meet Mr. Hart here, who's of course his boss, and we find out the mystery of what August 23rd is. Why there's a heart on the calendar. They're going to have the dinner there, and we also meet Norm. Asif Ali is an interesting character, and there's a couple of things that come up in the second episode, but this is our introduction to him that makes me think this guy has a little more to do with what's happening around here with Wanda and Vision. All right, let's move on. And then we get back to we find out what's going on there, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But then we go back to this friendship, and you're talking about the ladies are reading out of a magazine that says, "Oh, if you make yourself stumble around, or it makes the man want you more." Let's get what's it like for you to watch these kinds of scenes as a woman, watching these kinds of scenes and go like, "Oh, I get what they're referencing." And
well, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing, right? Is because the show is so self-aware that it really works in this scene where they're basically calling out all of these old tropes of trying to be like the shrinking woman, but at the same time, even the sitcoms of the 1960s that were about the 1950s, they were self-aware to a certain level as well, where they were also like really playing into this idea of, you know, the woman who's working hard to please her husband, but like, what does the husband actually have to do?
Right.
And that's something that, again, they directly call out within this scene. And Agnes is constantly calling out her husband.
Ralph
is.
Let me tell you about Ralph.
Also want to give a little love to David Lengel, who's playing Phil Jones. The mustache is just incredible. I mean, it works so well. He is essentially the David Schwimmer of this situation. The hangdog guy that everyone's constantly, kind of calling out, whatever.
Yeah.
But
I saw him at auditions for years, and whenever I would see him, I'm like, God, that guy looks just like David Schwimmer.
Yeah.
makes
The other thing that kind of strikes me again about the Wanda Agnes thing is this whole idea of, again, like, she is very much the person that is in there calling out like a lot of the cracks in Wanda's universe, because they have this whole conversation of like, oh, it's our anniversary, or she asks her like, oh, what's a single gal like you doing in a town like this? And she's like, oh no, I'm married. And she goes, okay, well, where's your wedding ring? And again, like, it works on the multiple levels of, oh, it's weird that you don't have a wedding ring on, but also, hey, maybe pay attention and like build your universe a little better.
Because as opposed to, that's a really good point, because as opposed to like the Hearts, which we're going to get to in a minute at dinner, or Dottie, who sort of hone in on something and don't let it go, Agnes is sort of being like, hey, by the way, might want to think about this. It's really interesting.
Right. Well, let's move into the ad here. Emma, let me get your thoughts on this. The Toastmate 2000, the woman, the actress playing her, she's going to play she might be the actress in all these ads, because she certainly showed up in the second episode as well, but she looks like Lucille Ball.
She looks just like Lucille Ball. Yeah.
And then the beeping on this toaster, which is the Toastmate 2000 from Stark Industries. Two things here. Forget the past. This is your future. But also the beeping. That's almost like a bomb. Is this a reference to Pietro's death, possibly? Is this a reference to just her anger, or rising anger and mistrust of Stark? What do you think it is, Emma?
I think that my inclination was more of a rising distrust of Stark, and also just like this idea of, because again, like, she's definitely, even though like theory wise, and we'll get into this later, because you keep hearing on the radio, like, Wanda, who's doing this to you. Right. And I feel like she's doing it to herself to like keep herself safe. That's my theory, but we'll see as we get further in. Certainly. But yeah, with the whole like Stark Industry things, and you brought up the line of like, forget the past, this is your future. Like, but they're saying that within this like past sitcom world that she's created.
Right.
So to me, that's sort of a message of like, again, this idea of her like drawing into herself and this escapism to process her trauma through her interpretation of what were probably the shows that she was able to watch as a kid. So listen, these ads are multi-layered is what I'm saying.
Exactly. I was going to say that the toaster, the Stark toaster, that's the unexploded bomb that she and Pietro that they talk about in Age of Ultron.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
These commercials are a point of trauma for her.
Yes.
That's a good way of putting it.
They're going in order. Like, they're going in order. Like, when you go from this to the next one, I same thing. Yeah, her parents were killed by a Stark missile in Sokovia, and then there was an unexploded missile that her and Pietro stared at for days with Stark's name on it, which is why they hate Stark. Also, a lot of people on the internet are conjecturing that the actor and actress that are going to be in these commercials might actually be Wanda and Pietro's parents. There's a lot of so again, to your point, like, I do think these are points of trauma for Wanda. And kind of tied to her past for sure.
Yeah, I like that.
Goosebumps.
Yep.
I just got goosebumps.
Goosebumps. All right, let's move on to the Hearts dinner. Let's not, and we want to make sure we get these reviews done in a certain amount of time. So let's move on to the Hearts dinner. A lot happens here. Shout out to Fred Malamet, who plays Mr. Hart, and Debra Jo Rupp, who all of us know from the 70s show.
Oh my God. What great casting with Debra Jo Rupp. And she also looks literally exactly the same.
Yes, she does. Right?
She really does.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing. And they're great chemistry. They have great chemistry there because, of course, Mr. Hart playing that classic 50s boss.
Yeah.
Just, whoa, what are you doing here? And this is all about a promotion. everything that can go wrong does go wrong this night. Yet in the end, he still offers him the promotion, which is crazy. But let's not skip over all the stuff that happens here. Mike, what was your feeling as we got through all this dinner? You know, there's no hors d'oeuvres. There's a mistake of her thinking it's the anniversary. So they do the Sokovia welcome, supposedly. All of this stuff. What did you feel about it as you were watching the dinner?
Well, and I'm sure Emma's going to echo this as well, but like it was classic sitcom. They set up Yakety Yak earlier. He used Yakety Yak as the distraction. Wanda's in the kitchen. Agnes comes in to help. She won't leave. They do the fun circling the kitchen. Like lots and lots of comedy, lots and lots of fun. I'll skip over that in a minute because to get to the part that I really thought this is where the show really turned for me as like, oh, I'm having fun. Let's see where this goes, to being like, holy shit. Mr. Hart, when everything is going crazy, accuses Vision of having all this chaos in his house.
Yeah.
Perfectly normal line. The fact that Wanda's powers in the comics are chaos magic, I think it's also a very specifically chosen word. Certainly. But then they sit down to dinner, and what was great about it is, up until this point, everything had been shot very straight, down the line, 3-camera sitcom. Yeah. There was the stage, it was the set, it was the whole thing live in front of a studio audience. Yeah. When Mr. and Mrs. Hart start honing in on the questions, as we were saying, Agnes comes in and kind of gives you a nudge. Yeah. The Harts were like, when were you married? Why did you move here? Most importantly, why don't you have children yet? Very specific question. And then Mr. Hart gets agitated that they won't answer.
Right.
And as soon as he gets agitated, a couple things happen. He chokes and falls over. Also, we all of a sudden go to single camera. Mm-hmm. We zoom in, we're close in, we're zooming, the camera shots become way more complex, and the table starts shaking slightly. Like, we go full Twilight Zone. And Mrs. Hart, starting to tell her husband, stop that, then turns to Wanda and looks almost desperate with a smile on her face, like she just got sprayed with Joker gas. And she's like, stop that. And everything goes crazy. And for me, this was amazing because this was the power of doing everything straight down the line sitcom up to that point made this moment just jump out at you on every possible level, which I thought was absolutely astounding.
Yeah, it's a great point you bring up. He keeps asking her, why did you come here? Why did you come here? That's what causes the reaction there. And I think it's a strawberry that's stuck in his throat, which was a reference to earlier when she said, well, would they mind to have the strawberry cut in 3 parts, But also Mrs. Hart is saying, I want to make sure stop it is what she's saying. So she has an awareness that it's Wanda doing this, right? But she's afraid to, I don't know if you guys remember that Twilight Zone episode with the kid who makes everybody of the town is afraid of him because he can do terrible things to people. And they all just kind of smile and do whatever he wants because they're all afraid he can die. He turns one of them into a Jack-in-the-Box. It's just that you get that vibe here that yes, Wanda's all smiles and everything like that. But some of the people involved in this are scared for their either made up or real lives, depending on what town if she's actually descended on a town or created this whole town from scratch. Shannon, what did you get from this back and forth between the Harts and Wanda here where Mr. Hart almost dies?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was definitely the stuff that Mike pointed out, that you went from a traditional three camera format into that single camera. Yeah. And the fact that it was Wanda when she said, Vision, help him. That's what got everything got reset then, and everything got put back to normal. And we see echoes of that in the next episode as well. So it's definitely laying the groundwork for this. This is what is going on, even though we only have we got a shoestring of what's actually happening, but it is setting the groundwork for what is happening.
Yeah. Well, because in having Vision go to his aid, she's again protecting herself from the trauma that she's gone through in her own real life, where she has experienced so much death. Yeah. And so in this world, of course, Vision has all of Vision's regular powers, so he can just reach right into his throat and pull out whatever he's choking on. No Heimlich maneuver needed.
And also to Shannon's point, you reminded me of this, Shannon, the way that Elizabeth Olsen, props to her, both her and Vision, but her particularly on their acting, because if you pay attention, go back and rewatch the episodes. Anytime that she is talking about, I really want to fit in here, this is our home. Yeah. When she says to Vision, help him, she comes out of sitcom acting.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, big time.
And there are moments where she breaks the sitcom kind of silly, oh, well, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And there's a very, very true, honest moment. And you can track them, and they all are surrounding, we have to make this work.
Right.
So it's just something to track as you continue to go back and watch it again, and as we watch the episodes moving forward.
Yeah, and I also like this idea. I don't want to move past the Hearts dinner too quickly until we reference this thing. When he says we don't break bread with Bolsheviks, that's a little bit of a Russian reference, and then later on in the next episode, which we'll get into, there's that accusation that Norm is a communist. So there's a little stuff being weaved in here. Of course, you have Red Scare in the 50s and in the 60s, but of course, there's also stuff that might be getting referenced here that we're going to get to in the overall MCU, as this is the opening in essence of Phase 4. Mike, you were taking a breath. What did you have something else you wanted to add?
And then the one thing I wanted to add before we move on is that the one thing about this episode that does not track like a 1950s sitcom, and John, you referenced it earlier, is in a 1950s sitcom, everything would have happened the way it happened, except Wanda and Vision would have done something amazing to impress the boss at the last minute.
Yeah.
What's very key here, and it kind of happens again in the second episode, is they don't do anything. Like, it's a disaster. The whole thing is a disaster. He almost dies. They stand up. As soon as that moment is over, they end the sitcom the way you would, but it's completely unearned. Like, he didn't earn the promotion. It was not a lovely night. They get the fuck out of there. Like, nothing makes sense, but it all wraps up with a bow because we're like, we're getting back to normal now. And it's just, that really is affecting, like, the cracks really show there. Obviously, we're going to talk in a second about the second episode where the cracks really begin to show. But for people who are like, well, this first episode was just like a straight down the line, I'm like, it really wasn't if you really pay attention.
It wasn't. Like, format-wise, it is, because, again, but what's so interesting about it, as you point out, is that they are forcing it into that sitcom ending. Yeah. They just said, well, everything's going to wrap up perfectly because we said so, not because we actually went through the steps to earn this ending.
Right, exactly. This is my overall general point for people who criticize it. It's her vision of it. So in her idea, Vision did do something great by pulling that strawberry out, even though she initiated the strawberry getting stuck in his throat. And then she has that's right, these always end this way. So she has a happy ending to her own version of this sitcom, even though it's completely unearned. All right, so we finish up with the Hearts. We have the lobster knocking thing, all of that, nice fun little reference.
The lobster ending up on the door was so funny. Especially just like sent the lobsters flying out the window, and then Vision goes to try to find the lobsters.
Yeah, you're right, exactly right. And then they sit down, and I think this is where we see the wedding rings, or is that in the second episode?
She makes them wedding rings at the end of the episode.
We don't have a song, we don't have an anniversary date, so they make this their official anniversary date. They make Yakety Yak their song, and then they talk about the wedding rings, and then she does them. And of course, which is perfect sitcom, Shannon, you hear the "aw," which is great when the rings come. Those little subtle things they do to make it feel like a 50s sitcom is just brilliant. Then, as we pan out, we see this hexagonal design to their panning out, and then eventually we get to an old school monitor here, some computer screens, and the sword logo on a notebook, and the sword logo on the computer. So, what's going on here? Thoughts, Vogel? What do you think?
Well, so really quickly, for anyone who's not aware, in the comics, SWORD stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department. For anyone who watched the ending of Spider-Man Far From Home, that big spaceship Nick Fury was on pretty much looks like the SWORD station. This is the new SHIELD. Interesting thing, in the Topps trading cards for WandaVision that have recently come out, one word has changed. It's not Sentient World Observation, which is the space station from the comics. It's Sentient Weapon Observation and Response Department. And of course, Wanda and Vision both are sentient weapons, given their power levels. So this is where we get that hint. This is where we get that big hint that we get further confirmed in episode 2, that these agents of SWORD, which through all the trailers, every comic book nerd has been conjecturing that's what this is. This is the confirmation that SWORD is trying to get in, is observing this. What I thought was interesting is it seems like it's not just like they are standing outside of some dome unsure of what's going on.
Right.
She's literally, whoever is writing the note in the notebook is literally watching the show.
On a monitor.
On a monitor. So I found that to be really, really interesting. And obviously, that was a great sort of Marvel ending. Like, we had this very 1950s show, and then this was almost like the post-credit, oh shit, just at the end of the episode.
Also, Emma, I don't know if you caught this, as you're looking that shot, the shot itself is full of modern and past equipment, right?
Yes.
You've got essentially what looks like a roadcaster, things you use to monitor your microphone and your cameras and what have you.
Right.
Then you've got those old school, what I remember using, Army stuff, and then the modern monitor that's there as well. So there's a combination of what the show's reflected there in the computer equipment that's sitting there.
Yeah. Oh, there definitely is. And it does kind of, and then again, that to me is where the mystery really plays in of like, okay, where is Wanda really?
Right.
Yeah.
Because she's not really in this house living this happy sitcom married life with Vision.
Right. Right.
Or
or
is she? I mean, like I mean,
That's
there is the
over a town or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I it seems to me, and it more comes out in the second episode than the first episode, but these people don't seem like they are made up creations. Like it's all happening in her head. These people look like they are being manipulated, and when the cracks start showing, they're not too thrilled about it. Yeah. So I don't know if she has remade an actual town in 2020 into this Vision. Like it's going to be really interesting to see as we get further into it.
That's what's happening. So let's get into the second episode.
And one thing on the credits for the show, directed by Abe Brown. Abe Brown is a classmate of Peter Parker's from Spider-Man: Homecoming, who was not dusted. So this is 5 years after that.
Wow, interesting. Okay, cool. All right, let's get into the second episode. It is essentially the talent show for the town, or shall I say, for the children. For the children.
For the children.
God.
This whole thing begins once again in classic form when we get the actual scene before the opening logo and the opening credits and what have you and song. This one is, you're hearing this bumping sound outside. They're sleeping on single beds like they did in I Love Lucy and other sitcoms. And we get Vision being scared, as if Vision can be scared of anything, being scared of these bumping noises, trying to play like, or she's trying to make him play the classic sitcom dad husband thing, and then she pushes the beds together, and they of course have a nice little morning tryst, shall we say, or evening tryst. But yeah, and then we get into the opening logo and theme song. Shannon, the opening logo is animated this time, and it feels very much like Bewitched, feels very much like Jetsons. What do you think about this overall opening for the second episode?
It is loaded. Loaded with Easter eggs. I mean, you can go anywhere on the internet and someone has gone through and was trying to figure out what meant what. One of the really interesting ones is you see a helmet that some people say is the Grim Reaper, other people say is Galactus, but it is a helmet with two prongs on each side. Mm-hmm. So what starts off as a really kind of friendly and upbeat animated opening credit sequence, there's actually clues about stuff that could be coming all over the place.
Johnny, you had mentioned at the end of the episode when it sort of zooms out on them, I Love Lucy style, it's a hexagon, which is either 6 Infinity Stones or the Mind Stone all by itself.
Yes.
And the moon in this opening credit, the stars around it are also shaped like a hexagon with 6 stars. Yep. As is, when we get into the scene after this, the Mind Stone is clearly on the illusion box. So lots of references to the Mind Stone, to the Infinity Stones as well. There's also a reference in one of the store backgrounds in the animated background to Agatha Harkness and her cat. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot going on in there.
Yeah. And also, this is how they use to introduce the fact that this world is now going to have more characters in it, because we start to see them in the animated opening that we have here for this episode. Emma, we are introduced. They are preparing to do a magic show. Of course, these two in the Cabinet of Mysteries. So this entire opening, the next scene rather, after the opening, what's your feeling about what did you take from this opening here? Is it making references to magic, making references to kind of trying to fool people? What was your feeling as you were watching that?
Well, I mean, number one, of course, it works on the level of, obviously, Wanda has magic. Her power is literally chaos magic. So, of course, there is that. But yeah, the Cabinet of Mystery thing it seems to me to be rather intentional in terms of it actually referencing some previous comics. Am I correct in saying that?
I haven't seen anything. Have you, Mike?
Well, I don't know about the cabinet. I know that they're names of illusion and glamour, in addition to being other words for magic. In the Wanda and Vision comic book, where they moved to a suburban area outside of New Jersey, there was another magical couple who actually had powers named Illusion and Glamour. So there is another Easter egg kind of reference to the comics in that. I'm not. Was there more about the cabinet, Emma, that you were?
I don't know. I was trying to do some research into that. I came across the illusion and glamour thing as well. But yeah. So, but again, like it brings up also immediately for us as the audience being familiar with these characters and the fact that they could basically literally do magic. The question of like, okay, like, are they going to pull this off or are they going to take this too far? Right. And the town's going to basically find out their secret. It's very Bewitched.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very Bewitched.
1,000%. And but the front of the cabinet is very, those kind of jagged power looking, magic looking things. But there's a kind of a pseudo helmet at the top of it as well. So I don't know.
I think it's the Mind Stone.
Yeah, is that what it is at the top? Is the Mind
Stone?
Yeah,
I think so. It's pretty clearly looks like it's shaped like it's the hexagonal, but I mean I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a reference to the actual Mind Stone.
Okay, and Shannon, there's a couple of lines here, and I want your thoughts on this. We talk about cracks. The cracks start to show from the beginning here because that loud noise ends up becoming something that shatters their beautiful existence. But also, you get in this reference, there's two lines here that stood out to me. Are you not worried that the audience might see through this charade? That's certainly layered, Vision says. But also, Wanda says, why are Fred and Linda building a moat? You build a moat to keep something that's dangerous out from getting to you, and they're building this castle. Well, so is this her sensing that people are trying to remove themselves or fight back against her mind control of them in this fantasy?
Absolutely, because one, that sound at the beginning before the credits roll, that is not a tree hitting a glass. Right, I mean, that is a very loud boom. And when they open the blinds, I mean, this is her justification. This is her creating this, like, oh, that's what that noise was. The whole moat. That's like, yes, whatever is happening, it seems like the people that are around them are trying to separate themselves from them.
Yeah.
Well, okay. and also, Johnny, because when Vision says to her, "Aren't you worried people are going to see through this illusion?" Her response is, "Well, in real magic, everything is fake."
Right.
Which is her saying, "This is what magicians do," but also in real magic, everything is fake, and she is literally living in a world where everything is fake. So again, like everything working on both levels. I saw somebody in a review that I read yesterday, which I really thought was funny. They were like, if only our English teachers could see us now. They tried so hard. They tried so hard in high school to get us to find all the hidden meaning in all these references. And we were like, I don't have time for it. But now we are like, let's dive in.
That's true. Well, we leave them because they say, I'll see you at showtime. And they take off, Vision takes off. And then Wanda is left there in the house. She hears the sound again, the crashing sound. This time, once again, as Michael referenced in the first episode, her face changes from the sitcom face to a little more of a dangerous face. Emma, she walks out, and this is the first splash of color that we've seen.
Yes, it is.
Helicopter that's
false.
Wait, no.
The toaster.
Toaster.
Well, that's the ad. I'm talking about in the episode. There's to me the ad versus her. But I see your point.
That's fair.
I see your point. Though.
Hey, Johnny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, all right, we go in and we see the toy helicopter, Emma, in the bushes. It is the same color of Iron Man, the red and the gold kind of mixed in, and the sword logo.
But it has the sword logo on it.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. What was you feeling seeing that?
Well, I mean, again, so obviously she is trying to create justifications for what's going on. We talked about the moat situation. So then she has to walk outside and address what's going on. And so to me, this is sort of here we are truly seeing the cracks in her universe in a way that we haven't seen quite so boldly before by introducing this concept of color, which then of course will come around again at the end of the episode when it's like, okay, which to me felt like a response of, well, in order to like fight the color that's seeping into this universe, we just have to embrace the color that's seeping into this universe, and we're just going to go with it, and that's what it's going to be now.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, and also we do hear like the voice of one of the like sword FBI people later on in the episode. But again, like this is where we're first like very starkly introduced to this idea.
Starkly.
Starkly, exactly, very starkly. But again, but you do also get then sort of like the very direct Iron Man reference with the color as well of the helicopter.
And Mike, is this her, taking down a actual helicopter and possibly killing these people who are trying to break through? And also explain to me what the mailman moment is with Agnes, where she says,
"Oh yeah,
what does that even mean?" It's not even referred to later on in the show.
Yeah. So the mailman moment really stuck out to me.
Right.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is going to turn out to be Sword sent a drone in,
right?
And she translated it into a helicopter because that made sense for the era, which ties in a little bit to the whole beekeeper moment later on. Or was there like a giant helicopter that was hovering over this town potentially, and was trying to get in, and it fell in, and I think that there is definitely an element of her brain sort of trying to translate what the reality is, and sometimes sometimes it's easier for her, like with the tree at the beginning, and sometimes it's like it's hard for her to handle everything. Also, of note, the second things get weird and she's really not sure what to do, who shows up?
Agnes. Every time.
Agnes walks right in there and is like, "Hey, let's just forget about that."
Star of the show.
And then the question with the mailman thing is this like, hey, let's make sure, like, I don't know, but there's definitely something to it. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely some kind of meaning to the mailman moment.
Yeah. Well, and also that helicopter, if that big booming sound was that helicopter crashing, we have a character that's going to be introduced whose mom was a pilot.
Right.
So
that's a really good point. Yeah, Geraldine
was on it.
Yeah, Geraldine.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about that, but yeah, Geraldine, who we all know because of the casting, is Monica Rambeau, doesn't show up until after that. That's really interesting.
Right. Yeah, she's seen in the animated opening, but she's not seen physically until after that. You're right, Mike. That's for sure. Yeah, Agnes shows up and they go off to meet Dottie. For those of you who are Beverly Hills 90210 or Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans, you know the actress who plays Dottie. We'll get to that in just a second. But yes, they're walking together. Dottie's apparently, as it is in the 50s, you got that one woman who is in charge of everything. She's your access to everything. And we've seen that many times in those old 50s sitcoms. So, but there's this moment where Agnes stops her, Shannon, and says, "I want to give you a little bit of friendly advice. And is it about my outfit?" And she says, "Well, yeah, but we can't do anything about it." And then gets into what she feels that she needs to, tells her, like, you got to be friends with this woman. She can help you, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, "Oh, I'll just be myself." And then we get that break. Kathryn Hahn does such a fantastic job in that moment, being afraid to say, yes, you should be yourself, and then laughs uncomfortably. What did you think of that?
Oh, I mean, layers upon layers, man. I mean, that's, again, Kathryn Hahn is doing such a good job. And I didn't really think about until you guys have brought it up, the way that she is pointing out the cracks.
Yeah.
She's also helping fill them in.
Yeah.
So the idea that is she the bad guy? We don't know. But right now, it seems like she's doing everything she can to keep Wanda's world together.
Right.
Which could mean exactly, it could literally go either way. Either she is the good guy, she is literally trying to help Wanda maintain this world to keep her safe, or she's the bad guy because she's trying to help Wanda maintain this world to keep her removed from the actual world.
Right. Yeah. The longer the illusion goes, maybe the more power she gets.
Yeah.
And the more friendlier she becomes, maybe she has a way to manipulate Wanda even more. She'll trust her even more because she's always there in those moments where Wanda is unsettled to help her, to help normalize or to help center her again. That's for sure. And this idea of, once again, Mike, we get this theme that's running through this idea of fitting in. If you want to fit in, you got to make friends with Dottie. You get the most uncomfortable get together we've ever seen. What was your feeling about this entire scene before we get to the glass breaking in Dottie's hands? The way she kind of owns this whole committee of women. What was your feeling as you were watching that, Mike?
My feeling is, as a gay man, we are drawn. we are drawn to the mean girl, but we also are scared of the mean girl. So I loved it. Like every shitty, snarky thing she said to keep those other women in line. I was like, I hate you, but I respect you. You are my kind of lady. couple things before we get to the glass breaking that I picked up on that I thought were obviously, as we just said, this is the first time we meet Geraldine.
Yes.
Geraldine and Wanda form an instant bond and are called out repeatedly by Dottie for it. Again, layers upon layers. Typical sitcom.
Yes.
This is just Dottie being the mean girl, but also Geraldine, and again, the acting is on point here, seems a little bit unsure. A little bit confused.
Well,
she says literally, I
Right.
don't really know what I'm doing here. And Wanda's like, yeah, me neither. And so there's that going on, which is interesting. Two things with Agnes. One, as I said, lots of devil references, lots of potential. This is the one that I think is the most legit, that makes me feel like some of the other weirder ones might also have some credence.
Right.
Dottie says about the planning committee for the children, the devil is in the details. Right. And Agnes's response is, that's not all he's in.
Right.
Yeah.
That's totally what he is. Yeah, right. Is it a Mephisto?
And again, it's that super layered thing of that totally works as a 60s sitcom joke.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's more to it.
Yeah,
the other thing that I found really interesting, this episode it does a thing that's different than the first episode. The first episode is straight down the line. This episode, we know in the 60s, as Johnny referenced, a lot of these couples had separate beds.
Yes.
Right away, they make one bed and they have sex, which you would have never seen on TV. Agnes is passing around the booze and saying, how did anybody do these things sober? There's a lot of things where characters, in this episode, characters are starting to do things and say things that would never actually have been said back then.
Sure.
Which and they're funny lines and they work, but like it's a little bit anachronistic and you're like, okay, so what's happening? Like it was another little hint that this one was less straight down the line than episode 1 was.
Well, because it's very much, and the way that these lines are delivered absolutely work. And because they're done in that style of these sitcoms. But again, these are things that would not have actually happened in the sitcoms. Very notably, Bewitched, I believe, was one of the first, if not the first sitcom where Samantha and Darren did sleep in the same bed eventually. Like they had a big bed that the two of them slept in.
Yep.
And even Wanda kind of questioning the fact that she's wearing pants when none of the other women are. I mean, all of these things, like it's all sort of like things aren't quite matching up. It was all just really interesting. And then, of course, to Johnny's point, Dottie. I guess first we go to Paul Bettany. Johnny, what do you want to talk about next? Where are we going first?
Real quick, I don't want to throw in to add on to what you said. First of all, shout out to Teyona Paris, who is playing a Monica Rambeau, aka Geraldine.
Yes.
The fact that she hesitates to say her name because she's not sure what her name actually is. So that's an interesting moment as well to add on to I actually don't know what I'm doing here. So she's going to be interesting to watch. We see already in the trailer that she gets jettisoned out of this world. So how long does she stay in before they jettison her? What does that lead to? So I'm curious of that, but she's doing an incredible job and she fits seamlessly into this world so well with the way she's doing and the way she's delivering the lines as well, the way she approaches this. Yeah, let's go on to Paul Bettany over there at the Westview Public Library, the neighborhood watch meeting here with Norm. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You thought the women were bad. These men are a bunch of gossipy bitches. But carry on.
And I hate to break it to you, as men are. So, let's break that trope now. But Norm is there. But we also meet Herb. First time we meet Herb, a wonderful David Payton Jones is there as well. And they initially resist Vision showing up, but then he kind of sits down because he's got some new business to bring up. And eventually he kind of wins them over in these conversations. And this whole conversation is about pointing out other people's fake veneer of accomplishment or fake veneer of the world that they've created, the reality they've created. The bowling trophies are from Hackensack. The tree house was pre-built. This idea that what people are presenting of themselves is an actual lie of what it really is, but it's to look good. Once again, this idea of what's real, what isn't real being brought up here. We get the Norm reference to him being a communist, which I think is interesting. Then big red gum, a weird masturbation thing. Once again, to your point, Mike, this idea of bringing up stuff people wouldn't bring up. So yeah.
Anyway, also big red. I'm throwing these all in there because I'm not. had Agnes not said the devil thing, but a lot of people are like, Big Red is a specific choice for gum. Devil. Just saying.
Fiery. Yeah, absolutely.
And it works on the two levels of the devil, and also, again, as you've been bringing up, John, like the idea
Red Scare,
of communism and Red Scare. Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's something here. And remember, Black Widow has Russian stuff to it. So what's this connection that they're using here as we open phase 4? Shannon, I want to get your thoughts on this. What is this idea of Herb? Like, Herb is such an unusual character in this whole thing. You know, he kind of takes control. He's kind of playful, but he seems so out of place with everybody else. What did you feel about him being in this scene?
I mean, again, he's another character that showed up after that helicopter crash.
Good point. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And also, was it him or was it Asif Ali who gave him the gum?
It was him.
This is a guy who could be trying to neutralize some threats.
Good point.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the gum being a thing to neutralize.
Yeah, I am really intrigued. I didn't even think about this till you guys all pointed this out, like that Geraldine and Herb and some of these people don't show up until after the helicopter, which I think is pretty interesting.
The mailman. I think those are the only 3 people. Then we'll get to the beekeeper in a little bit, but those are the only 3 people until the helicopter shows up. I mean, Dottie is Dottie. That was always going to happen. But Geraldine and Herb are very interesting. That's a great point you bring up, Shannon, because we met Norm already and we met Jones already. But Norm, again, the communist thing, I just think there's something here with Norm that they're going to get to in a little bit.
It was such a weird moment. Like, it was such a, I mean, and again, to Emma's, it played as here's some gossip. I'm the robot. I don't understand gossip. But like, it was such a specific thing. And there was just that beat and it was like, oh, okay, let's move on. You're really funny. You can hang out with us. It was very, very strange.
Why are you having a meeting, Emma? A loud meeting in the library. Why are you having a loud meeting in the library? Right?
Again, that is another thing of the levels of this is kind of starting to fall apart because, like you said, loud meeting in a library, and also just and again, like you brought up the thing with like the bowling trophies and all the sort of layers there of none of this actually means anything.
Oh, good boy. Yeah. All right, so let's go back to Wanda and Dottie. Wanda's punished for talking to everybody while Dottie is talking herself, and so she has to help with the cleanup. We get the tongue sticking out, which I think is great. But then we get this thing where Dottie kind of breaks the crack here, or cracks it here again. Mike, you speak about these cracks because she says, "I've heard things about you and your husband." And she said, "Well, I don't mean you any harm." And she says, "I don't believe you." And then the radio we start to hear, "Help me, Rhonda," or "Help me, Wanda." Yeah. And remember, "Help Me, Rhonda" is a Beach Boys song about a guy trying to get over the loss of a girl. And so once again, it's about loss, right? And that's what the song is about. And then we hear, I think it's Jimmy Woo. Yeah, Jimmy Woo. We hear Jimmy Woo to the radio as well. Then the glass shatters, and she's got another stark color of red. What was your thoughts about this scene there, Mikey?
Really, again, this was another moment where when Wanda says to Dottie, we mean you no harm, or we're not dangerous, whatever she says. That is not a Wanda in this episode of the sitcom. Right. That's Wanda. Saying, like if the first episode of WandaVision is like, if the first episode is all about we don't know why we're here, we're having memory lapses, this entire episode is about we need to belong. We need to fit in. This is what we need. And so that was a very earnest plea saying, we don't mean you any harm. We want to fit in here. And when Dottie's like, "I don't believe you," like it was just, I'm not sure what Dottie's deal is. And again, like there's a lot of things. Who in this, it's clear that everyone is fulfilling a role that Wanda or some bigger force, but I think I'm with Emma. I think Wanda wants them to be.
Yes.
Some of them may be sword agents. Some of them might just be innocent people who got caught up in this town. Yeah. Some of them might be agents of Mephisto or Nightmare. Yeah. Like there's a lot of ways that you could interpret this, but it's definitely the crack showing, the blood. But again, just like with the hearts in episode 1, She's bleeding actual red blood. There's this weird moment.
Yes.
The radio plays, and Dottie makes some line about how a housewife gets blood out of linen and goes off, and we just move on as if nothing had happened. Like, the cracks show for us, and then the world reverts to, we're going back to sitcom.
I feel like, based on how things end in this episode, that Dottie has some awareness that something is not right about this, or she may fully know and is actively trying to maintain the illusion.
And remember too. Well, first of all, shout out to Emma Caulfield, who's great.
Oh my God, she's so good.
But remember, Dottie is short for Dorothy. Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, two alternate realities. Again, that kind of situation there as well. She creates an alternate reality to escape when she's been knocked out by the hurricane or the tornado, whatever. So
it's a tornado. It's a tornado.
Oh,
it's a tornado. Yeah, it's definitely a tornado.
There's red beeping. All right. So she says. So we hear Wanda who's doing this to the. So now we go to the ad of the show here, and this is for a Strucker watch. He'll make time for you, and then we hear what sounds like the ticking of a time bomb. Shannon, thoughts on this one, man?
The watch, well, one, we see the Hydra logo right there on the watch. The watch is set to 242, and Avengers 242 has to do with Avengers 238, where Vision is being reactivated. So another point of trauma, this is Strucker experimenting on her and her brother. So looking at Wanda's MCU history, we can start to kind of pinpoint what the next commercial could be.
Yeah.
Are we gonna General Ross? Something with General Ross, Sokovia Accords, Lagos?
I think we're gonna go Pietro's death.
Okay.
I think we're gonna go the Sokovia Accords or Lagos. And then, I mean, definitely Vision. I feel like that'll be the last one.
Yeah, that'll be the last
there's
one.
One in between there that is escaping me right now.
As someone who was lucky to see episode 3, I cannot confirm nor deny.
Oh, yeah. Don't you say anything. Don't you say anything.
I'm not saying a word.
I know. I'm trying to think if it will have something to do with like when she basically gets like placed under house arrest in Civil War.
That's one.
Possible.
Oh, I mean, I was gonna say maybe Hawkeye zapping her with that arrow.
Oh, maybe.
But
they're all good guesses. These are all great guesses.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on before Johnny says something he shouldn't say. I'm getting nervous.
Hold it. All right, let's move on to the talent show. This is just hijinks and hilarity. Please, Emma. Yes.
I was gonna say, I'm just gonna sidebar here for a second. So obviously, a lot of this series was filmed in Atlanta, but I happen to also know that a good portion of it was filmed at Universal on the back lot. And so the whole time during the talent show, I was like, is this Courthouse Square?
It totally is. You're right. Crap. Wow. Yeah, Emma and I both having worked there, but Emma, of course, being a VIP guide, so she's like, she knows that place inside and out.
I know that back lot very well.
great reference. So we get the talent show, and of course, what we have is Wanda is pacing back and forth in the outfit that they had made jokes about earlier, and she is worried. We have Geraldine there as well. She's essentially the stage manager of the talent show, and then Vision shows up, and he is essentially it's the drunk scene from any sitcom you've seen.
Yes.
Right, exactly. So, Mikey, thoughts on this before we get out onto the stage?
Well, just great for Paul Bettany. Like, this is something he never thought he would have been able to play as Vision. Like, to Shannon's point at the top, like they just, despite all the trauma and layers of everything that we're diving into as we try and suss out what the fuck is going on, they're just having the time of their life. Like Paul Bettany playing drunk and Elizabeth Olsen playing we gotta figure this out. Let me be Samantha from Bewitched. Like, it's so fun. And like Emma said, I was just enjoying this like I would enjoy an episode of Bewitched as the back part of my nerd brain was trying to put things together.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think was brought up earlier on this episode that we were talking about is the entire show hinges on you believing the relationship between Scarlet Witch and Vision and rooting for them. Like, I am rooting for them to succeed through every disastrous ending of both of these episodes where everything that possibly could go wrong goes wrong, but I still want them to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we have it's these two super powered fucking Avengers, and we're like, I hope this talent show works out.
You're right. You're so invested by this point. You're right. Well, they come out as, quote, illusion and glamour there to do their tricks. Of course, Vision gets it backwards because he's essentially backwards himself, as Gum has essentially gummed up the works, too on the nose at times. But Vision says, Vision also talks about how easily few humans are fooled and says all this inappropriate stuff and levitates himself. And Wanda has to get him out of these situations, somehow she's able to create a rope thing and nobody catches it and does, kind of strings it up. And he
I don't know if you ever watched an episode of Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, but this is how it works.
This is literally,
the crinkling of the nose. You're right, yeah. And then Vision picks up the piano, which is Jones's grandma's piano, which is great. And then
so funny.
She turns it into a flat thing and then says something really cool, which she says, "Oh, you weren't supposed to see how we did that." So very interesting reference. So throughout this whole talent show, she is constantly saving him, and then eventually they do the trick with the cabinet of whatever it is, and Geraldine comes out. But throughout this whole thing, though, Emma, the faces, the looks on these people's faces as they're trying to cheer, but also be scared of it, like actors looking to her left and right in a very scared way. What do you think about all that?
Well, now I'm definitely on board with the idea that she has somehow like co-opted an actual existing town and forced them into her idea of what her current reality is. Yeah. And you're seeing these people. And the thing is, it works on so many levels, because even in a contemporary setting in our own world where people don't have superpowers, we'd freak out a little bit if we were seeing this happening. But at the same time, they're presenting it under the illusion of this being a magic show for a talent show. So you're like, maybe it's just tricks.
and I mean, even though it is very in keeping with how an I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched episode would work, to Johnny's point, it's just another example of, as long as the people in this town are given the barest hint of this is the solution, they'll jump to it. They'll jump to it so things revert back to normal. The other thing that I think we got to talk a little bit about here is this is a talent show that's being done for the children.
Yes.
Every time anybody says for the children, they sound like fucking creepy ass zombies. Yes. And also, there are no children in this town.
Yeah, no children.
We don't see, there's not a single child present anywhere. And knowing what you know, if you're a comics fan, knowing what we've talked about Wanda and Vision's history, children, them having children in sort of a mystical sense, because again, Vision is a robot, it seems to be a huge part of what's going on here.
Yeah. Also, we get a little reference from Beverly, who is played by Jolene Purdy, when she says, "Oh, is that how mirrors work?" And Dottie tells her to shut up immediately, right? This idea, there is a mirror dimension in the Marvel universe, which is a parallel dimension that allows the user to practice their magical abilities and fight their enemies without the public's knowledge. So is that something that is, I mean, that's pointed out so strongly in that moment. So it must be a reference here.
And it was first pointed out in Doctor Strange, which we know Scarlet Witch is going to be in the Doctor Strange sequel. And there have been rumors that he might pop up in this.
Right.
Oh, I hope so.
Me too. So they end up getting off the stage. Wanda figures out that it's gum inside of him, pulls the gum out, and they try to escape, covering their, face up with the top hat. Dottie pulls them back in, gives them an award, says they were incredibly funny. They win the comedy performance of the year. Ironic, considering these are two of the most serious characters in the Marvel universe. And then Geraldine gets brought out. They do the bow, and she says, "I have to ask for 1 second. I have to ask 1 second. I was backstage, and the next I was in a dark cubby hole." Is this a reference to her own journey into this WandaVision thing that Monica Rambeau came in?
Emma, that was literally exactly what I was thinking as we were having this whole conversation of the fact that she doesn't show up until after we see the helicopter. And it's this idea of she got pulled into this universe, and we're just like reiterating that through I was backstage just doing my job, and then I was And then here I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. All right. So let's. Then she goes. Then they go back to the house, and it's a classic ending of a sitcom moment where it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad fitting in.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And they make a reference for the children, and as they stand up, Wanda is pregnant, Mikey, and they have a sweet kiss. But then we hear, so they're about to have a sweet kiss.
Yeah.
Then we hear the loud noise.
And then, and specifically, she asks Vision, "Is this real?
Is this real? Right. Good
Is
point.
this real?" And he's like, "Yes, my darling." Like there. And again, not sitcom moment. Like we went from sitcom moment, like da 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 da. We did it. We made the talent show to a. They are having a real moment, and then yes, it is interrupted by a loud noise outside.
Right, and they walk out there, and there is a beekeeper coming out of a manhole, and Wanda, once again, Mike, as you referenced here, breaks the sitcom wall and says no, and then rewinds everything back. But let's talk about this beekeeper. Who is this beekeeper? One of the bees, the logo, the sword logo, I think is on his back. But some people are saying this might be AIM because the AIM troops would dress up and look like beekeepers when they were doing this.
So AIM in the comics, advanced idea mechanics, kind of an offshoot of Hydra that are really into machines and stuff. And they've been in a ton of stuff. And yes, their outfits do look like beekeeper hazmat outfits. So
and they're founded by Strucker as well. Yeah,
and they're founded by Strucker. But given that there's a sword logo, I think what is more likely, the bees is a lot. But I do think sort of what we were saying before about the helicopter, whether this was a drone or a helicopter with Monica Rambeau in it or whatever that was sort of translated in Wanda's mind into a toy, I think that this is just a hazmat suit that an agent of S.W.O.R.D. would wear as they are trying to infiltrate Wanda's vision, that her brain turns that into a beekeeper suit. That is
okay.
A hazmat suit doesn't quite fit the genre of the sitcom, but a beekeeper kind of makes more sense. That is still a little bit of a stretch. Like there's a lot of bees, so it's a weird moment. But that would be more of my guess. That obviously whoever it is someone from outside of the show, outside of Wanda's, trying to get in. And given the sword logo on the back, it's like, well, it's a sword agent.
Yeah.
Emma?
The question is too: is it? I agree. I see the hazmat suit thing perfectly, but I also think just in general that the beekeeper outfit conceals the identity of whoever it is that came in. So it is also, in my mind, possible that it is somebody that she is familiar with, that she is aware of, that is trying to break into her illusion, who she's intentionally concealing the identity of.
I'll throw one at you, Shannon, and Emma and Mike. You guys can respond as well. But Shannon, I read this thing on Den of Geek, and it blew my mind. There are certain characters you read about and you love in Marvel, and they don't get the big fanfare, but Wonder Man is one of those characters. And someone on Den of Geek kind of broke down the possibility that this beekeeper could be Eric Williams, who is the brother of Simon Wonder Man Williams. And Eric Williams has been a main villain for Wanda and a Vision for quite some time in the Marvel comics. And their reason is beekeeper kind of rhymes with Grim Reaper. And so is this idea that someone is coming to shatter their illusion? Is this possible that this is someone related to Wonder Man, who is a villain in the Marvel universe to Scarlet Witch and Vision?
That helmet.
Yes, I was going to say the helmet
from the credits. I mean, so that's certainly a possibility. And what you said he was Wonder Man's brother, right?
Yeah, right. Simon Wonder Man Williams' brother. Yeah.
I mean, sure. Everything's on the table right now.
At this point, I can't tell.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
I can't tell if Marvel is fucking with us or we're all just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I can't even tell at this point.
Yeah.
It's like I'm like, wait, their address was this. Like, well, Shannon over here is like, the time was this, which relates to this comic, and I'm like, okay, guys, we are going down the rabbit hole here.
Well, like you said, it's been a barren desert, Mikey. We're enjoying the shit out of this for sure. But yeah, it could be. You're right, Shannon. The helmet shows up in that opening of this episode. Could that be something that references to it? And if we get Wonder Man as a connection to this Grim Reaper, I would be out of my mind and happy. Anyway, she says no, rewinds things back to the living room there. They share that moment again. Then the kiss happens, and she turns everything to color. and we have that ending. So now we're moving into the color version of these sitcoms, or colorized, version of these sitcoms. So Emma, what do you think about this overall ending here of her trying to keep it together and then kind of changing everything, moving forward? Is she progressing out of this hole by moving forward in time in her mind to the next decade of sitcoms?
I'll tell you what, the only thing that could make this more Bewitched, which is a sitcom that started in black and white and then eventually moved into color,
great point,
is if they also just replaced Vision.
Well, new Darren and old Darren,
New Darren and old Darren.
And if some Marvel character showed up as Endora, you can't have Bewitched without Endora.
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Hello, Darren.
But again, I bring it back to, as we see, we're seeing color starting to infiltrate this universe. So to me, the fact that she made it all color speaks to her being like, okay, the color, I can't fight against the color thing anymore. So I'm going to introduce that into this world, and we're going to progress with that. And we're going to normalize that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Any thoughts on this one, Shannon, before we wrap up this particular part of the episode?
No, I agree with Emma. I mean, Wanda is rolling with the punches. Like she can no longer keep this part out. She's like, all right, if I can't keep it out, then I'm going to take over everything then.
Yeah.
And who knows what effect this is having on the outside world.
Yeah. And Mikey, as we move out of, once again, the end of this, we hear Jimmy Yang once again saying, Wanda, who is doing this to you, right?
Yeah, we get the hexagon out again, which I think is either Infinity Stone reference or Mind Stone specific reference, but obviously a very important shape in Marvel. And and we hear Detective or Agent Wu saying, Wanda, who's doing this to you? Which really leads to the big question that everybody, is Wanda doing this to herself? Right. Is this Mephisto, as a lot of people think? Is it Nightmare, who is a character that deals with your nightmares, who was rumored to be the villain in Doctor Strange 2 early on before Sam Raimi took over, and might still be the villain? So there's a lot of potential tie-ins. We don't know. Is it none of that? Is this literally just Wanda dealing with her stages of grief? And she is the villain of her own story, or the hero of her own story, if this is what she works through. I mean, there's so many interesting questions, but like we said at the top of this, what I love about this show is it's just working as a fun, this is a really funny sitcom. It's fun to see these characters play in this world. Right. It's working as a really fun sort of continuation of the story that we know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mm-hmm. And it's working as this really fun, weird Twilight Zone, Black Mirror style mystery.
Yeah. And go ahead now. Yep.
Oh, no. Yeah. I'm just echoing those sentiments completely of you are living on a base level. Just looking at this show, you've got this great homage to the American sitcom, but there's so much double meaning in all of the dialogue, and it's just really, it's just fun and fascinating.
One thing to throw in, the hexagonal shape could also be, I saw this reference here on slate.com. They said it could be, the honeycomb shape could also be a reference to the Universal Neural Teleportation Network system of space travel from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, especially since there's evidence that Marvel's Eternals will come out is set in space, so they're headed to space. And the honeycomb could also be related to the beekeeper from episode 2 as well. So that we see here. So there's these connected tissues here that could go around, and I don't want to move past the end credits either. Those kind of technical colors, the red, green, and blue stuff that leads to these rings, these wedding rings united. What do you think about that, Mikey?
Well, red and green and black, those are pixels. I mean, those are three. We'd not now that we all have such awesome advanced TVs, but when I was a kid, you would go, if you got really close to your TV set, TV light was made through red, green, and blue pixels. So it is clearly, the entire end credit sequence is sort of a digital version or a computer generated version of what we're watching, which is Wanda is creating her reality through television. So the wedding rings, Vision's mask, Wanda's mask, the staircase, like all the things you see when you watch the closing credit sequence that are done in those three colors, this is Wanda creating her reality in a TV format.
Yeah, there we go. All right, well, that's how the episode ends. We end up back. We just hear that, and then the episode ends, and we are left to wonder what we're going to get in episode 3 of WandaVision. Mike, any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
Yeah, my final thought is you're not left to wonder. You already saw it.
That's true. I was very lucky.
No spoilers for episode 3 until we get to the spoiler review next week, but were you satisfied?
Very much so. Let me tell you something. Everything starts to happen in episode 3.
Okay.
So they did a great job in the first 2 episodes, laying the groundwork so you understand what's happening. And I think these breakdowns are great for people who really want to dive deep into this stuff. And then episode 3 is where everything starts to kind of happen more and more. And I can't wait for the next episodes. Like I'm mad I don't have all episodes to binge in one day because I would tear through this shit.
Yeah.
Well, then my final thought is just it's sort of a continuation of what we're saying, but it is that it's great when something that you love gives you what you want.
Yes.
But it's even better when they give you something that you didn't think you wanted and you really like it. And we've like we said, we've been in the desert. It's been so long since we've had some MCU stuff. Just seeing the Marvel logo come up made me happy. But this is such a weird, bizarre way to tell the continuation of this specific story of these 2 characters. Yeah. And it just sort of, along with Marvel diving into the multiverse and everything that we know that's coming up that is super weird, it's great that they gave us 10 years of what we got. Yeah. And it's great that they now have the confidence and the freedom to go into some really weird shit. And if this is where we're going for the next phase of Marvel, I'm 1,000% on board.
Absolutely. Any final words on these 2 episodes, Emma?
Apparently my cat has something he'd like to say. What I want to say is that this makes me so excited for Marvel television in general, because this TV show would never be a movie. It is too weird for them to have taken that big of a risk. And I so appreciate what a huge risk they did take. Because it is paying off for me in a way that makes me really excited about Marvel content again. And I'm ready for our Brady Bunch episode, you know?
I think it's coming. Shannon, thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I was watching The Mandalorian on Friday mornings. I tried to watch it at midnight a couple of times. I'm like, I'm just too tired right now. Yeah. And so Vogel and I had an early writer's room this past Friday. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to watch one episode. I'm going to watch one WandaVision episode. I'll watch the second one before we start. Yeah. I blazed through the first 2 and went back and watched them again.
Yeah.
And so thank goodness they did not release these all at once, because I would have done a marathon.
Yeah. That's the
temptation. And I will say, because I love The Mandalorian, and I've gone back and watched like the Ahsoka episode or the finale episode a few times, and like this is nothing against Mandalorian. If you listen to our Mandalorian reviews, I was a huge fan. But because of the mystery, and because these episodes are working on so many different layers, and because every line of dialogue could be interpreted in different ways, the rewatchability of WandaVision is huge. Yeah. Like, I just keep wanting to go back in to look at how Agnes responded to this line, or the way that was this Wanda from TV, or was this Wanda real? So like the rewatchability is high, and I hope that continues as well.
Yeah, I don't know how much more I can echo all 3 of my esteemed colleagues' comments. Absolutely agree with them all. Thoroughly agree with them all. Can't wait to keep walking down this path. I will once episode 3 becomes of it, because they only let us have it for 2 days, and then they took episode 3 off. So they won't. So I'll have to watch it again when they drop. I can't wait to watch it again when it drops on Thursday night. But same to Shannon's point. When they told me that it was done at 6 a.m. Friday morning, I had a very long day of recording on Thursday. I was done at 10 o'clock. 10:30, I put on these episodes because I have to watch. I'm not going to watch this, and so I watched all 3 episodes, and they were great. So I watched the last 2 again. So they are, and Mike, you're absolutely right. Rewatchability off the charts. So hopefully we helped you figure out some of the stuff that was happening. Let us know in the comments section below if we missed anything at all, or anything that you thought would be fun to theorize about that we could explore. We do read the comments. You know, Michael reads those comments, so please leave those comments. We will respond to them if we can. Big thanks to Emma Fyffe. She will be joining us for all of this. Where can they find you and everything you got going on?
Oh, I'm just, at Emma Fyffe all over the internet. Wherever Emma Fyffes are sold, you can find me. Emma Fyffe, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. And then also be sure to check out the stuff that we are doing on Ven. You can find us on Roku app and Samsung TVs and on Ben.tv in our more linear format, but we are also now focusing on uploading more polished versions of things to our YouTube channel. So I think it's Download Ven is where you'll find, or Ven Download is where you'll find the stuff that I'm on.
Awesome. Look for that stuff. You know, you guys know Emma for years. She's fantastic. Go watch all her stuff there for sure. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies, on Instagram @the_geek_buddies. If you would like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung, on Instagram @Shannon the Geek Boy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Hey, everybody. Talking about WandaVision has been a real gas. We'd love to keep this little shindig going, and you could do some stuff to help us out. Go ahead and hit a little click on that like button and subscribe to this guy's page. It's pretty faboo. And the other things that you can do is you can follow us on Twitter, like Shannon said. And if you're following us there, go ahead and leave some comments. We love to have a chat with you. And if you're listening to us on Anchor or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any place that these podcasts are sold, go ahead and give us some stars and a couple comments. It helps us go right up there in the ratings. Leave some comments below. We'll have a little chat, and we'll see you real soon.
Absolutely. Very well said, Mike. Mike Agnes, very well said. And please share this episode as well on your social media. Let people know you like this content. If you like it, they trust your judgment. They'll come aboard and be part of the Geek Buddies crew as well. All right, we're out of here. Much love to you. Episode 3 coming. We'll be dropping these every Saturday, so look for them to come out every Saturday for you to enjoy. We'll talk to you next time on another brand new spoiler review episode of The
Geek
Buddies.